Hey y'all, in this video I'm going to take a much deeper dive in explaining how I set up fixture offsets in Mach4 for the spoil board on my Avid CNC router. Now, in a previous video I gave an overview of how I took this pattern of 1/4 inch dowel holes and used that to set up a G59 work offset. And this system did work very well. Now, looking at the file itself, I didn't need to draw out a huge graphic representation of my entire spoil board because the pattern was going to be relatively small. So I created a 12-inch by 12-inch piece of material, setting my Z0 position to the material surface because I want to drill a specific distance down into this surface. Even though it is my machine bed, I want it to take that measurement from the surface of the material. I set my XY datum position to the bottom left, which is actually the front left corner of my spoil board. Now, if you missed that video, I'll put a link to it down in the description box of this video, and I'll put a link to it up in a card up here in this corner right about now. Now, in my last video, I detailed how I did some repair on my spoil board, which was needed due to some miscalculations on cutting depths and just normal wear and tear on my spoil board. And that repair involved the use of automotive body filler. Well, I knew that I would get filler down in some of these holes, so to prevent that, I went ahead and I filled each one of these holes with a small piece of 1/4 inch hardwood dowel. Then I surfaced the spoil board nice and smooth. If you missed that video, I've put a link to that video down in the description box of this video, and I'll put another link up here in a card right about now. Now, I had fully intended on creating another work offset to replace this one that I had filled in with wooden dowels. But after using this offset for a while, I decided that I needed to extend it upwards in Y to help me more accurately locate longer pieces of material that may have a bit of a bow in it. I also decided to extend this pattern out in X for much the same reason should I mount a piece of material horizontally. So I decided to create a new pattern of dowel holes that extended the most of the length in Y of my spoil board and went all the way over to the halfway point of the width of my spoil board in X. I then decided, why not make a second work location out here so that I could have two fixture offsets? So that's exactly what I did. I went ahead and spaced out more dowel holes, getting gradually further and further apart the further away from the origin I went. Then I copied these holes in Y and pasted them along the center line of my spoil board. For my X position dowel holes, I took measurements from the far left edge of my spoil board and placed these 1/4 inch diameter circles accordingly so that they fell on a strip of MDF, avoiding the gaps between the strips of MDF that house my aluminum T-track. So as you see, the spacing is not even, but it doesn't need to be even. It just needs to be effective, and it is. For those who are wondering about the numbers, the center of each of these dowel holes is 1 inch to the right of this edge of my spoil board, and the holes that run in the X direction are 1 inch back from the front edge of my spoil board. So with those locations figured out, I then grouped them all and created a simple drilling toolpath. Now, in this drilling toolpath, I set my start depth at 0, and I wanted it to cut 1/2 inch deep, using a 2-flute, 1/4 inch upcut spiral end mill. It's important that when you're drilling straight down that you use an upcut spiral end mill. Do not drill straight down with a downcut end mill. I did not use peck drilling. I just wanted it to drill straight down and let that upcut spiral evacuate those chips, then move on to the next hole. I calculated the tool path, and we can preview it here. With that completed, I saved my G-code and took it outside onto the machine. Let's go outside now, and I will show you on my Avid CNC how I set my XY0 to the front left edge of my spoil board, ran this tool path to drill all these holes, then set this corner location as a G55 Fixture Offset, and this location as a G56 Fixture Offset. Okay, the first thing I'm going to need to do is set my X, Y, 0. So I'm going to do that using the Avid CNC touch plate and this precision ground steel dowel. It's 1/2 inch diameter, and I use this with the Avid touch plate to set X and Y 0 because the routine for Avid CNC requires you to spin the flutes of a bit to match whichever axis direction the bit's going to move to. Well, using the round dowel precludes the need to do that. I don't have to spin anything around and make sure it's all lined up and what have you. I can just drop the dowel down into the orifice of the touch plate here. There we go. Bring that down. Put my ground magnet on the dowel and then lift up and test to make sure I've got good connectivity. Then I go over here to Auto Z touch plate, and if you look up here, it asks for a tool diameter. My tool diameter is 1/2 inch. Okay, and now I can lift, and we see it changes to probe signal active when I do my sanity check. Now I'll put it down in the corner, and I don't need to do anything else other than click the correct button on my touch plate operations screen down here, because this is where I'm probing the bottom left corner. The first thing that's going to happen is the Z is going to come down and make contact, then lift up just enough to where it can move in X and Y with no issues. So I'll go ahead and click this. The bit comes down, touches the brass plate, then lifts up slightly, and Mach4 is telling me to orient the flutes in line with the Y-axis. Well, it's a round dowel, so I don't need to do that. I can just click OK. And now here we go. We're probing for Y. Got it. Now it's telling me orient the flutes in line with the x-axis. Again, I don't need to do that. I just click. And now it moves in X. Comes over and touches the touch plate. And now my X and Y axis are zeroed. Okay, now I can lift up my Z, disconnect this, and I can put in the bit that I'm going to use to cut this tool path, which is my 1/4 inch diameter upcut bit. So let me go ahead and change out my bit, then I'll come set my Z0. Now I know in a previous video I made a big thing about how you don't have to set your Z0 in the same spot you set your X and Y0. But for convenience sake, I'm going to do exactly that. So let me bring my bit over here. Bring it down slightly so it doesn't spend a lot of time probing at that speed. And now I can just probe the Z. And my Z is now set. So I am ready to run this tool path. Okay, after getting all of the holes drilled, I now have two separate locations that I can use these precision ground dowels to locate two pieces of material. Now I need to set the X, Y origin for both of these zones, both of these fixture offsets. And I'm going to do that with this piece of MDF. I know it has a nice square corner on it. So that's what I'm going to use to set the XY0 for this fixture offset and for this fixture offset. Okay, now we're going to be doing a little bit of back and forth in this segment of the video. And this is where I'm going to set a fixture offset for the material I just mounted in this corner right here. Okay, if we come up here to Mach4 and I come up to the Offsets tab, I currently have a bunch of different figures in the various offsets. My previous video, I set a G59 offset that was zeroed to a location very close to this corner here. Well, that offset, that fixture offset, is now gone. So I need to remove all the numbers in that G59 offset. I will not be using it anymore. So I'll come up here into the X category, the X column near G59, and I'll enter 0 and hit enter. Same thing here. 0, enter. 0, enter. Now if you look, I have one in the G58 as well. I've never set up a G58 offset. So I'll come up here. Now, 0, enter. I'm going to do this for all of the cells. Now I have all of the cells in G55 through G59. They're all set to 0. My G54 offset has some values in it. That is where I ran the last G-code file from that drilled all these holes in the spoil board. So that was the work offset for that particular toolpath. Well, now I'm going to set up this fixture offset for this first corner over here where I have my material mounted. And I'm going to save that location in G55. So I have the current offset, G55 active, and that's right here. You can see that it's green. Now I'm going to bring up my Auto Z touch plate. I'm going to mount my 1/2-inch dowel back in the spindle, and the spindle will not be turned on for this operation. I'm going to set an X, Y, 0. So bring up my touch plate, put it here on the corner of the material, and now I'll maneuver the spindle over. Get it closer to the center. Now I'm going to bring it down. And now I'm going to touch off the bottom left corner of this piece of material. Now, the controller is telling me to orient the flutes with the Y-axis. Again, because it's a round dowel, I don't have to do that. It's touched off the Y, and if you look up there, under G55 on the Y, it's set a value. Now it's telling me to orient the flutes in line with the X-axis. And the bit has lifted up. And I now have an X, Y value next to G55. There is also a Z value. This is irrelevant, simply because every time I change bits and reset my Z0, it's going to change. Now it needs to be said that all of these values, X, Y, and Z, are in machine coordinates. So now I'm going to move my bit out of the way. I'm going to remove this piece of material. And I'm going to scoot it over to my next work location, and I'm going to set that up as a G56 offset. Okay, with this piece now mounted over here, aligned with these dowel holes, I'm now ready to set my next fixture offset. So I'll come up here into Mach4, and I'm going to switch over to G56. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to probe X and Y using the touch plate. G56 is set. I'm going to set it to the bottom left corner. Orient the flutes in line with the Y-axis. Orient the flutes in line with the X-axis. And the XY location of my G56 work offset is now set. Now I can test this by putting it in G55, come back over to Program Run, and set it Go to Work XY0. It should come back over to this corner. Now to test my other work offset, I'll come up here into my Offsets tab, go into G56, come back into Program Run, go to Work XY0. We're all set. So that's all there is to setting 2 or more fixture offsets in the Mach4 software. Now it's a similar process for Mach3, although depending upon your screen set, it will look very different from my profile in Mach4. Now, why did I do this? Well, number one, I have 2 separate work locations that I can mount 2 pieces of material to, run this one, and while that's cutting, mount a piece of material over here. When this gets finished cutting, I can go back into my Offsets tab, activate G56, click Go to Work XY0, it'll come right over here. Then I can set my Z0 to the surface of this material, cycle start G-code, and let this one cut. Come back over here, remove this piece of material, put my pins back in place, mount another piece of material, get it mounted, pull these pins out while this one is cutting. Then when this one is finished, I can come back over here into my Offsets tab, go to G55, go to Work XY0, the spindle will move over here to this point, set my Z0 to the top of this material, cycle start G-code, let this one cut, remove this piece of material, then mount my next project. So I have 2 known locations on my work table that I can work with. Could I set up more? By all means. I could set up another location right here and another location over here and cut 4 in a row. My point is, you have options. There are lots of advantages to using this type of a system. Setting up 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of material on your spoil board may not be important to you. That may not be why you would use something like this. The major advantage is it gives you a known XY0 location that you can go to repeatably every time you turn on your CNC router, providing you home the machine first. If the power should go out, I know when the power comes back on, I can turn everything back on, go into G56 Work Offset, click Go to Work XY0, and that spindle is going to come back to this corner of the material, whether I have removed this piece of material or not. I no longer have to guess. Now, yes, you will have to reset your Z0 every time you change material, because not all material is going to be exactly the same thickness. There is a way to avoid that, and that is to set your Z0 to the machine bed. Then all you have to do is set that Z0 one time. And when this piece of material is finished, go to Work XY0 for the next work offset, cycle start G code. I don't even need to set my Z0. But that's the next video. In the next video in this series, we're going to get into setting your Z0 to the material surface versus setting it to the machine bed. I'll demonstrate both methods, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of both systems. But again, that's the next video. Now, I know there's no way I answered every question you may have about setting up a fixture offset. So this afternoon at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, I'll be hosting a live Q&A session where you can ask me any question you'd like about anything I've demonstrated in this video or any of my previous videos. That's this afternoon at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on my YouTube channel. And I put a link to that live Q&A session down in the description box of this video. So I hope you got something out of this video. And if you did, I do hope you'll give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to follow along with my further CNC adventures, I do hope you'll subscribe to my channel. Now, before we wrap this up, I'd like to say a special thank you to all of my channel members. And remember, channel members, check the community tab for the link to this Monday's members only live stream. Now, if you'd like information on how to become a channel member, just click that little join button right next to the subscribe button. A panel will pop up and a video will play that will tell you all about channel membership. So I hope to see everybody this afternoon for the live Q&A session. And as always, whether you subscribe to my channel or not, whether you become a channel member or not, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to watch. Y'all take care.